Just a second, guys. I'm just making sure we go online everywhere. Yep. So we are live now. Okay. Let me just get our panelists online. But before I do that, I just want to check if all the settings are right. Sorry about this technical issue. Right. Okay. Good. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this 8th week of the Virtual Festival of Facades. My name is Ahad Ahmad. I'm part of the organizing committee of the Virtual Festival of Facades. Today's discussion is an international panel discussion. It has people from multi-countries collaborating on building projects which feature complex facades. I'll quickly introduce you to our today's panelists and speakers. Let me first quickly introduce them to you. I hope you are all able to see my video. Right. So, okay. So, as I mentioned, today's panel discussion is on international collaborations on complex facades, from computational design to physical construction. So our panelists are starting with apologies for my Dutch pronunciation. It's Herd Luzikur. He's a partner at UNStudio. He has been part of UNStudio's management team since 2008, and he is involved in complex design processes with a focus on typological innovation. He received his Master of Architecture from TU Delft, after which he joined the UNStudio in 2006. He has since worked on complex projects such as the Karle Town Centre in Bangalore, the Wasl Tower in Dubai, Le Toison d'Or in Brussels, and the Theatre de Stoop in Spijkenis. I hope I got that right. Innovation in the fields of health, technology, and sustainable solutions are his focal points of expertise. Our second panelist is Lucio Blandini. He's a managing director and partner at Werner Sobek. Werner Sobek are one of the world's leading facade consultants. And Lucio studied structural engineering at the universities of Catania and Bologna before moving to the University of Stuttgart. There he obtained his PhD at the Institute of Lightweight Structures and Conceptual Design. Lucio is involved a lot in academia. He's also a PhD holder, as you see, so you need to call him Dr. Lucio Blandini. He's been a partner and managing director since 2018, and since 2020, he's also been the head of ILEK and a full-time professor. The next panelist is Deepak Shankar Kamath. He's the Deputy General Manager of Tata Consultancy Engineers. He leads a team of around 60 architects, urban designers, landscape architects, visualizers who have consulted on more than 10 smart cities. Prior to joining TCE 7 years ago, he worked with other architectural firms to see residential, commercial, hospitality projects through their life cycle from the drawing board to completion. He's been involved in a lot of major projects, residential projects in Mumbai, manufacturing units also across Maharashtra, a 200-key warehouse, waterfront hotel in Mauritius, and a 100-bed cancer hospital at Naya Raipur. For Tata Consultancy Engineers. Okay, our next panelist is Senoj Alexander. So Senoj is the head and product development vice president at senior vice president at Karle Infra, and over a decade of consultancy in the architectural field. He moved to the real estate development side in 2015. Is responsible for the end-to-end product innovation and development, namely for Karle Infra's 70-acre, 1.3 million square feet flagship integrated township project in Bangalore. Earlier, he was the head of operations for Jurong International Group, Singapore, for the Indian business with a team of 60 members. So Senoj Zane is our next panelist. And then after him, we have Eric Hoogboom. He is a sales director at Sorba. Those who don't know Sorba are a specialist facade contractor out of the Netherlands. He's the commercial director, and Sorba, as I mentioned, manufactures cladding for facades, interiors, and infrastructure projects. So based in the Netherlands, close to the German border. So it was founded in 1977, and from the last 40 years, they've worked on a broad variety of projects, including concrete panels for the public transport terminal in Arnhem, the colorful cladding for the office tower of 400 Beethovenstraat on the Zuidas, Amsterdam, the 3D glass facade of the Depot Bourgemans. And then last but not least, our moderator for today is Marisa Cartwright. She is the business development officer at UNStudio, joining them in 2017, where she works across the fields of communications, knowledge sharing, and business development to connect colleagues within the studio and UNStudio's broad network of partners. So she holds an architectural history degree from the Barnard College of Columbia University and the Bartlett School of Architecture, University College London. Her professional experience spans research, writing, and strategic communications in New York, Paris, London, and Amsterdam. So these are our panelists for today's section. Let me start by getting all of them on board one by one. So I will start with Marisa. You have Senoj, you have Eric. I hope you can see all of them. You have Deepak, you have Gerard, you have Lucio. Right. I hope you can see all of them. And I'll just run you through today's format. So Marisa will be moderating today's session. If there are any questions, please do post them in the chat box. I know we are multi-streaming this on 4-5 platforms, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, on the Virtual Festival of Facades, on Twitter. So the chat options are a little different in all these platforms. So wherever you see chat or comment, please post your comments over there. I'll pick them up and I will pass them on to Marisa. So without taking further time, I would like to give control to Marisa. And Marisa, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ahad, for those introductions. And thank you to all the organizers at the ZAC Virtual Festival of Facades for making this possible. As Ahad has introduced me, I'm Marisa Cartwright. I'll be the moderator for today's session. And I'm delighted to welcome you to the International Collaborations on Complex Facades from Computational Design to Physical Construction panel. So I'll start with an overview of the session. The total length will be about an hour and a half. And in this first half hour, I'll briefly introduce the topic and then pass off to each of the panelists in turn to describe in some detail the complex facades that they've worked on in the past. We'll then move in the second half hour to a moderated discussion. And finally, we'll have time, as Ahad mentioned, for questions from the audience. So please do send in your questions through the chat as we go. So our speakers are coming to you today from Amsterdam, from Winterswijk, from Stuttgart, from Mumbai, from Bangalore, which I mentioned to give you a sense of the transcontinental nature of UNStudio's work and of course, complex facade projects more generally. UNStudio has worked internationally for nearly all of its 30 years, and the name UNStudio stands for the United Network Studio. Building projects of all typologies across the world wouldn't be possible without the strength of our consultant network. Further, UNStudio has led the architectural industry in advanced computational design in terms of the tools that we use and the complex building geometries that we produce. Our pursuit of custom design solutions that optimize on-site specific factors like sun, views, wind, and shadows requires that we work with consultants that are equipped to see our design through the tender, manufacturing, and construction stages. So with that said, we're thrilled to bring together today several of our collaborators who work with us on these projects to discuss them in detail. I'll now turn it over to each of the panelists to introduce themselves and their projects. So let me share my screen with you, and we will first head to Bangalore to hear from Senoj. Senoj, can I ask you to introduce the Karle Town Center project?
Yeah, thanks, Marisa. This is Senoj here. I hope people are seeing the screen. Just to let you know, Karle Town Center is a 1.3 million square feet developed. Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
I can
Hello?
hear you. Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Just proceed, Sinoj.
Yes. Yeah. So the Karle Town Centre is a 1.3 million square feet development in 70 acres of land up north on the northern quadrant of Bangalore. We started off this project in 2018 when we started the basic master plan, and in 2008. And in 2016, we came to a situation where we realized that we had to reimagine the urban design of this project. Our focus and our vision has been to provide to the city of Bangalore something that each one of us can be proud of. So when we were looking at what we should do with this project, we had of course an international selection of our choices partners, and we were fortunate to actually have partnered with UNStudio. And with UNStudio, what you see on the screen is it's 2.5 years of hard labor, where we actually put together a very, very intricate master plan and urban design, which showcases in all tenacity the importance of facade, something which we have actually forgotten in most of our architectural projects, I would say at least in this part of the world, in India. So what we believe is that facades are basically a reflection of a nation's aspiration. When we started to develop Karle Town Centre, we said that we're not going to benchmark for 2020, right? We were in 2015 when we started off. We said we're going to benchmark for 2050, and I think this was Gerard who actually put up this line saying that let's see ourselves in the cloud. Let's see ourselves in the cloud. Let's aim for what we see today, so that 5 years down the line, when we actually finish the project, it would have another 25 years of work for all the spectators and all the users of this. And in translating vision, one of the most important parameters have been the facade, the form, and the complicated models that we put this project through. We had done a lot of computers prior to agreeing upon this facade. If you notice, most of our projects, as showcased in Karle Town Centre, is a double skin facade. We have got glass box, which is the first skin. The first skin is basically created for an inside-out experience. One should appreciate the fact that most of the commercial office buildings have a occupancy density of not less than 100 square feet a person, and some of the offices are as dense as 70 square feet a person. When you have so many people working out of an office space, the inside-out experience, what you can see from inside of your office to the outside, is very important. So we decided as a team that the first skin has to be as transparent as possible. Now, when you do a transparent facade, you always have to fight the forces of nature, which is basically the sun. We have the heat indexes, re-radiated heat. So that's when UNStudio came back and developed the second skin concept. So putting together the first skin and second skin, we are able to address the building's aesthetic appeal. We are able to make it a landmark development. We are also able to honor all the requirements of climatic factors. So that's in a nutshell what Karle Town Centre is. And I think I should hand over to the next panelist, Maurice.
Thank you, Sinoj. So, sorry, we just had another one there, but Gerard, let's go to the Netherlands actually and hear from Eric.
Okay. Yes, my name is Eric Hogeboom. I'm a commercial director at Sorba. I work with Sorba now for over 33 years. And we developed as a very small company producing heater casings to a company building complex facades. And then we are always starting and looking at the cladding of facades. Maybe Marisa, you can show our first project. The slide of our first project.
Sure. Do you see the Groningen building here?
Yeah. But maybe the first one you can show is Arnhem, the one underneath.
Here we are.
Yeah.
I don't see that on the screen, Marisa.
Maybe there's a little bit of lag. Can you tell me if you see it now?
No.
I see it up on my screen. So I'm not sure if it's a lag or what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I will continue. I will explain a little bit more about Sorba. Because we started working on metal facades, we first concentrated on producing like aluminium cassette facades or stainless steel cassette facades, these kinds of facades. And that time we also looked at some other projects, but always in metal, like a cladding to tunnels, a cladding to an underground station, a cladding to bridges or whatever. This was also the time that we came in contact with UNStudio and looked at their first project, which was in the city of Arnhem, in the eastern part of the Netherlands, where they had a tunnel to clad with a stainless steel mesh. This was the first time we came in contact with UNStudio, and we also saw the whole master plan of UNStudio for the city of Arnhem, for the railway station area. And this was an incredible design, of which we thought as Sorba in the beginning, this was 1998 or 1999, I think. Wow, this is all incredible. It would be nice for Sorba to stay with these guys from UNStudio and see that we are able to produce all these type of claddings which are required for this whole master plan. And now in 2020, I can say that we were able to stay in contact with UNStudio, but also we stayed in contact with all the contracts that were to be given to the market. We won all of them, and we produced so many different kinds of claddings in this area, like the facades. Exactly, this picture is a nice picture. We started on the two buildings in the center, which we did the complete facades, glass, aluminium cladding, etc. Later on, we did the canopies on the platforms, which you see on the right-hand side. We did a complete canopies, glass and aluminium composite panels, including substructures. And then finally, which is really the masterpiece in my eyes, is a cladding of the roof. We did the external facade of the roof. We did the watertight layer. We did the insulation, the airtight layer. We did, but also the GRC panels on the roof, and also internally were some GRC claddings. All individual panels. All unique panels, I mean, on the roof, about 1,100 unique panels in size and shape. Incredible nice project, which also was for Sorba really a push in the development of our software we work with, and also the way of installations of these kind of heavy panels. And this also brought us in contact with much more complex projects in London, for instance. But also, we could look at through these projects. We could look at other projects. Most of them are always in Germany, Netherlands, or the UK. I think a nice example is one up, Marisa, the IBG project in Groningen, which we also did with UNStudio. A very nice project. These are the tax offices of the Netherlands. A very specific design by UNStudio with regards to sun shading, light entrance. We produced the fins to the building, and there was a special requirement to these facades because the other existing buildings were very close to the main new building. And also because of the shape of the building, we were not able to use external scaffolding. So we developed, together with the company who provided the glass facade, we developed a system of working without any scaffolding. So we worked really from the inside on the facade externally. It was a special system that we developed for this project. We were very successful. We were far within program, and the quality is really very, very good, and the building looks astonishing. And then my last project that I show here, this is the latest. This is the project we are currently finishing, which is the depotgebouw of the Boijmans van Beuningen Museum in Rotterdam, designed by MVRDV. It's a glass facade. All panels are double curved. It has a mirror coating. In the facades are some areas where you have like a curtain walling, but these panels, they run very smooth over in the glass as a cladding, and we did a complete facade. And even at the floor slab edge, at the ground floor, I must say, there are doors in this double curved shape that open like the doors of an airplane, which come outwards and then slide open. And when they close, you can't see even where the door was because of the mirror coating on the panels. It's a very special effect. So yeah, this is about Sorba. As a small company, when I started at Sorba 33 years ago, I was number 5 starting working at Sorba. Now we are a company of almost 100 people working there, and most of them are engineer or project manager. And then we have also, of course, a production department, assembly department. But this is where we are at the moment. And yeah, it's our challenge also for the near future. Where are we going? Do we follow the large complex projects in Europe, or maybe even further? Or stay we in these 3 countries? So this is the challenge we as Sorba have at the moment.
Thank you, Eric. We will follow up on that challenge a little bit later. Before we move to the next person, can I ask everyone on the panel who is not speaking to please mute their mics? We're getting a little bit of feedback, and I think it's from having the mic on. So I'll move to Gerard next, and I'll just double check that the slideshow is working for you. I think my screen is being shared, but I'm going to re-share it again from the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I have now the MVRDV project on my screen.
Gerard, I've just moved it to the next slide. Can you confirm that you see the Qingdao project?
Yeah, I actually don't see it yet. I'm not sure if you perhaps reshare the screen or something like that, if that could work.
Okay, let me reshare one more time.
Yeah, I see it. Well, I see it now. I see it now.
Now you do. Okay, I think there's a little bit of lag. So please bear with us as we deal with the lag, but I hope that everyone's able to see this project. And Gerard, go ahead.
So from my perspective, I've been working actually first mainly in Europe, and then did some projects in the Americas. Based on that experience, I slowly started to move also to Southeast Asia and Caucasus and Middle East. And this is one of the projects in China. And what I have experienced is actually that the way how we approach the projects doesn't really matter that much. What you see is actually that most of the projects have different challenges. Of course, in contracts, in the way how insurances are working, and in the way how the culture is defined. But on the other hand, you can see if you have enthusiastic clients, if you have an enthusiastic team that you can work with, a lot is possible, and a lot is actually what we can achieve. And in my experience, is the last part, like how can you build a team and how can you actually work through all our stages, like the design stages, engineering stages, and construction stages. That will actually make the project work. And for the Qingdao, the aim was to make a kind of it's the horticultural expo. This is one of the main pavilions, and the challenge was to make a pavilion that actually would attract the public, but would also give space to 12 million visitors in a very short time frame. So the logistics and the way how the project could be used afterward was kind of a key challenge in the way how we achieved it. The next project that I'm showing is actually showing also the challenge that you have, and that's the Kutaisi airport. It's a small airport in Georgia, and what happened in that airport is actually the client had the ambition to design the lobby of the new city. So if you create an international airport, that's where your visitors are going to be and where your visitors are landing. So the question how to build an airport is one question. The other question is how can you actually manufacture the airport? And what we did is we found out that there was a wood manufacturer company in Kutaisi, and we visited that company and we could see actually the craftsmanship from the people that worked there. I don't see the image, Marissa. Perhaps you can.
I don't know if it's lagged. It's coming up for me, but I'll
Yes.
unshare and reshare.
Yep.
You see it now? Okay.
Yeah, I have now.
Okay.
And we could make this out of steel. We can make it out of concrete. But when we were sitting there with the client on a terrace having dinner and looked at a bridge in Tbilisi, we saw a beautiful wooden bridge. And when the client told us that bridge was actually manufactured by a company from Kutaisi, where our airport was, the only thing we wanted to do as a team was go to that airport or to that manufacturer and just talk first with that manufacturer to see if they could actually manufacture our building. And when we were there, we could immediately see together with their team that they could handle a project like this, which means literally we changed our design and made sure that we could create a wooden main structure that could actually service the project. And I think that our challenges with every project is to, and we call it reverse engineering, is actually to find the manufacturers to make sure that we can build these projects. And I think looking at the project that we are now doing with the team of Senoj, our challenge is also how to create this project in India. But also, we know there is a big challenge we have worldwide. We have a climate crisis, we have a Paris Agreement, and we have agreed that the world should not get warmer than 2 degrees. And also India signed up for the Paris Agreement, and also India is working on that challenge. And we have so many countries that are working on that challenge. And the question is, what can we contribute as architects and engineers also to this challenge? And for us, the design of the second layer in the facade is mainly a design also to reduce the heat load, to bring energy to the facade. We have developed, for instance, paint, which is called the coolest white, which means that with that paint we can cool down facades and buildings, literally. And that's something we would like to implement also in the Karle town project, to reduce the energy requirements that you need, so to also make sure that we can contribute to the challenges that we have worldwide. And so our designs are very simple. Our ambition is to literally make avant-garde architecture and navigator projects, we call it, which means these projects should have a purpose, but also the aesthetics should be visible as a performance. And to create these projects, it means that our architects are literally trying to design this performance in an aesthetic way. And that means that we, with our software, we are not held back, which means we create double curved surfaces. We create complex buildings. But if you want to build it somewhere and you have to investigate the industry first, you can see that there are challenges coming up. And for us, these challenges is only, we can only challenge these challenges literally if we can do that together, and together with the client, and together with the engineers, and together with the manufacturers. And that's actually my point that I would like to make also for this virtual session. And that's that we believe everything is possible. The only thing is we have to find the right partners. That's actually my contribution now, Marissa.
Thank you, Gerard. Let's move to Dubai. I hope my screen has updated, but Lucio, I've got the Vossel Tower here for you to take it away.
I don't hear Lucio, and I don't see the Vossel Tower. Now I see the Vossel Tower.
Okay, Lucio, are you able to speak? I fear we don't hear you. Shall we hang on a moment while you work on the sound? Head back to India and then circle back to the Vossel Tower. Deepak, I'm going to move down to your slide. Can you speak now?
Yeah, Marisa. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes.
Yes. I'm Deepak Kamath here, Senior Architect at Tata Consulting Engineers. Ours is a company which is offering integrated engineering consultancy in different disciplines, and we are handling number of projects all over India. Our company is more than about 50 years in this field, offering their services to various clients, very well-known clients. We are doing a lot of nation-building projects in India. Few which I can name is the bullet train, which is now coming up, the tallest statue in the world, which came up in Gujarat, numerous other projects, nuclear power projects, transportation projects and things like that. So our company has been offering their services throughout India for a very long period, and it's good to be a part of such a varied disciplines that are there in this particular company. We are a team of architects and planners of about 60 people here, and I'm talking of a company which is a strength of about 3,000 people, and we have offices all over India. And being a part of the architecture team and the planners team, what we normally do is we have standalone projects where we are offering our consultancy services for projects in hospitality, commercial buildings and things like that. Apart from that, we are majorly involved presently with the Smart Cities project, which is a project which has come up in India in the last 3 years or so, where about 100 cities have been selected in India for the Smart Cities project, and various projects under this Smart City project are being taken up, where mainly it involves redevelopment or redesigning of various spaces or areas or urban areas where already there might be something which is there which is not planned, or there might be a scope for a greenfield project. So we have in this smart city projects, we have number of small projects which keep happening. If I talk only about the architectural or the planning part, there are markets, redevelopment of markets, there are sports stadiums, there are roads which are happening, there are administrative buildings. Smart cities project is basically a project which is looking to improve the living standards of the citizens of the city. So we have a lot of projects where they may not be visible in terms of the architecture part, but they do play a very big role in the developing or in satisfying the aspirations of the citizens of the city. So we do have projects which are related to utilities and things like that, where also we contribute as architects or planners. But mainly as an architect, there are a lot of projects which we have done recently and which are under execution now, one of which I am trying to show you here. So this is a project in West India in the state of Gujarat, where we were doing redevelopment of a existing market. Now in India we have these local bazaars or market which are not really planned, where people from the locality usually go around to buy their daily needs and all such stuff. So these markets are sort of unplanned areas which just keep growing organically. There's no planning as such. And in the smart cities, have seen a lot of such projects where the cities are trying to take up these markets and bring them to a level where some sort of planning is introduced and then followed. So we are trying to do that with many of these projects. I will say that in India, I saw some of the projects that our panelists have just introduced and shown us. This is a much smaller project, I will say, in terms of scale. But definitely, if I talk about the challenges that we face when we do projects in India, one of the challenges is the climate itself. We have variation of climates throughout the 12 months. We have a lot of issues with pollution at some places. The other aspect which is not that tangible is the culture of the people, or the thing where, you know, a project needs to become identified. People can identify themselves. You cannot have a project or a facade which looks alien in that particular setting. So that is a major challenge we face. And in smart cities, what we have tried to do is, wherever we have done the work, as I said, we are doing almost more than 10 smart cities right now. We have smart cities in various parts of India. So if I am talking of a smart city which is there in South India, whereas if I am talking of a smart city in West of India, we do try to see that we bring in some part of the culture, the motives, the local flavor to our elevation. So what I am showing you over here is a market which we developed or are in process of developing in West of India, and this is one of the options that we did over there. So what you see on the extreme left hand side is an art form of a tribe which is quite famous here in India. It is the Warli tribe, which is very famous for its paintings which they do with their own made paint, not an artificial paint, with their vegetables and things like that. They are manufacturing this paint, and they are very famous, these art forms. And you will see that there is a lot of intricate work in and designs in this, lot of small motifs which are there. And what we try to do when we get projects in this part of the world is try to get some of that feel or that motif or that thing into our design. So what I'm trying to show in the slide is the development that has happened from, if I take that form as an inspiration, and then how we go about bringing it to an actual skin of the building. So this building, I would like to highlight that it is a building which is non-air conditioned centrally. There will be no central air conditioning. So what we have tried to do, because it's a local market, it's a market where there will be small hawkers, there will be big shops, there will be areas where there will be just the courtyards where people will be selling their wares. So we are talking of a where we need a lot of natural light and ventilation. So what we have tried to do is have all these activities in the central part where there is a courtyard, and all the shops and all the other things are happening around around that courtyard. So that is how we try to bring in that aspect. And what you see, the facade over here is something where we have tried to get in panels which can be repeated. The panels themselves, the motifs have been derived from this Warli tribe art form. And these panels are something which are not absolutely solid, there are punctures, so that allows some amount of light, some amount of natural ventilation to happen. So that is what I'm trying to say, is that is the sort of challenge that we face when we are doing this sort of buildings all around India, where we need to not only satisfy the requirements of the project as such, of the people, but also need to take care of these other factors which are going to act on the building. Yeah.
Thank you, Deepak. And Lucio, are you able to speak now? Can we hear you?
I hope so. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. So I apologize for the technical inconvenience. Marisa, could you get back to the WASL tower?
I've just scrolled back. Perhaps there's another moment of lag, but I have it on Vassal now.
Okay, great. So please bear with me. I will just say some words while we are waiting that the image is coming. This has been a very challenging design where we've been working hand in hand together with UNStudio as technical planners in charge of engineering, facade, and MEP, while while UNStudio has been, of course, in charge of the design. And I would like to catch up on what Gert was saying about making performance visible, and it was the very interesting part of this work. I mean, the skin was, of course, a very relevant aspect of it, and we had the request from the client to build a sustainable tower, 300-meter high. I'm not sure if the right picture is currently shown, Maurice. I still see the.
Let me unshare and reshare and see.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, no, I think it is.
We have it. We have it.
Oh, okay.
So it's about a 300-meter tower, and the scheme is of one very relevant element. It was a relevant aspect from UNStudio side to have this torsional movement, the so-called torso. And from our perspective, it was very interesting to develop together a solution that is allowing to get as much natural light as possible. Also, this is a sustainable choice, because then at the end of the day, you don't switch on lights and you get a better feeling. It's healthier. And at the same time, we have to block too much heat insulation to come inside. We're in the Middle East. And we did it by using an innovative fin system, which is clad with ceramic element. This is the most biggest ceramic facade, which is currently under construction. You can see on the right picture. And what I believe it was also part of the strategy and part of the success of it. It was to say we will have more glass, more clear glass facing towards nodes, toward the sea, opening the view. And by having a parametric driven design, it was possible to work on the parameters and have a more opaque facade on toward the south, blocking a little bit more of the sun radiation. And there have been a lot of studies together in a joint effort. If you look further into if you move to the next slide, Marisa, in having also the size of the fin, the width of the fin. The fin is behind the fin. It's an opaque panel, and so by changing the width of the fin area and by changing the depth of it, it is possible to calibrate the performance depending on the different condition, and still having this unique character. And the skin is read as one skin which varies all over the height and all over the within the different sun exposition. So we are looking forward to see it completed. Its structure is completed. The facade is currently under construction. The fins are currently in production. So that within the next year, when the expo will be open, this is of course one milestone in terms of time schedule. Then we will be able to show this innovative, sustainable high-rise building. Then, can you, Marisa? Think there is still some time shift. Can you move to the next?
Yes, I've brought up the slide in Modena. There may be another few seconds before it comes up for you.
I picked this project we've been working on 10 years ago just because I think it gives it gives a perspective to, or it gives another perspective to our way of working. This is a project, the Enzo Ferrari Museum, we've been working on in Modena, entering this time not together with the architects from the beginning, as it was in the Wasel Tower, but entering later on the base of a set design together with a contractor, and which was a facade contractor, and we proposed certain improvements within the design that allow for a better appearance on one side and for more economic value on the other side, which is of course always relevant for the client. I believe there is still a time shift on the image.
Yeah, I still have the first image actually.
So bear with me for a second while the image I hope will pop up soon. But just to keep on the introduction of this project, in a way it's about working close with contractors on making a vision and making a design possible in different countries, and moving back and forth between working with on competitions at the early stages and working on the late stages on complex schemes. It allows us to cover the overall range, and it's a rich process, because then we get back to competition stage and we know what's working on site, we know what are the issues there, and we can be more focused. And since we are involved in the early stages, when we are on site, we know very well how the design team is thinking, and this is also helping finding a proper synthesis. I'm not sure if the image is shown.
No, perhaps you have to reshare.
Oh,
Yeah,
One
now
moment,
it's-
please. Okay. Well, bear with us here. Do you have it now, Lucio?
yes.
Yes.
If we move already to the next one, I hope it's going to be quicker this time.
Let's see.
Just
Right.
you have to reshare every time.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, but
Yeah,
that's one.
we have it.
Okay. Well, here we go, back and forth.
Okay, so the facade is about, in this case, is about a cable facade facing the Berghaus of Enzo Ferrari, and is about a monocoque roof, that means without any expansion joints in a way, made out of aluminium, calling the kind of typical design, sportive design, if you want, of automotive industry, in a way joining and linking it to the history of Ferrari. And our role here was to develop solutions that allow such a complex roof, and it was more than 10 years ago, 12 years actually to be more precise. And we developed one detail that is working with all the different geometrical conditions. And the main key of it, if we move to the next one, was to set up a parametric process in order to have all the steel elements carrying this aluminum facade driven by a script, by a software telling exactly how the geometry has to be. And these elements have been cut precisely with laser, and all the drilling have been driven by the machine, so that at the end of the day, the installation on the site can be done without big expertise. And I think this is a key working in different countries, that we set a strategy that it is robust enough to be developed with different kind of contractors and still delivering the quality that is required by the client. I think if you move directly to the last slide, and perhaps share it again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, now we get it. So you see the kind of quality that it can be achieved, and the design was driven in a very sophisticated way from our office, together with a contractor and with a design contribution. But the erection was very straightforward, and I think this is an interesting key and eventually an element to open the discussion then in the next steps.
Thank you, Lucio. Let me stop sharing my screen and we'll just return to all of us on screen. Great. Thank you all for those super interesting projects. I think we have more than enough to talk about. I do want to return to the question of construction systems, right? That based on the markets we're working in and the particular kinds of methodologies that are available to us in those markets, how do we make decisions? Especially, as Gerard mentioned, with all of the different crises we're facing today, from climate crises to the pandemic and the ensuing economic crisis, these decision-making processes of how do we choose kind of pros and cons, for instance, between unitized facade systems and stick systems. How do we make those decisions? I would like to bring it back to KTC and ask of Sinoj and Ger to reflect on what did that decision-making process look like in the KTC project? How did you decide based on labor conditions on site, on costs in the Netherlands, for instance? What kinds of factors came into your decision on what construction system to pursue?
Sinoj is still on mute, so perhaps I can start. I think that before we started to talk about the construction system, our first challenge was actually to look at the requirements of the client. And within the Karle company, one of the owners of the firm, Druva, he actually had a vision, and his vision was really to make a new type of project that actually would strengthen the cultural parameters, but also would bring something new, but also would bring something that you could be proud of instead of being ashamed of. And this was a very, very important driver for us to start the design with and to create a town center that actually would show something that is new and challenging. Based on that, the second question was, of course, how to construct it. And that's something where we brought in all kinds of specialists and advisors and engineers and look at systems. But what we found actually was that the market in Bangalore was not really ready yet to produce this for a cost level that was acceptable. And I think that a lot of meetings and discussions we had were mainly about what is the best system, but also how can we create something that can be manufactured, and also how can we make sure it can be built on site properly. And Sinoj can tell you much more about it than we can. But on the other hand, one of the most important things for us as architects, if sustainability and health is so important, for us it's also important to see that the quality on site and the health situation on site, and I mean health and safety, is also on the right level. And together with the client, we have also been looking at how to deal with training and educating the workers, make sure that we can reduce the amount of incidents, have a proper health safety team on site. And for us, that is also something that was one of the key things that we valued as important, because if you want to set an example, it's not only about the aesthetics of the architecture, it's also about how can we help actually the industry a step further. And I would like to perhaps, Sinoj, you look at it from the perspective of your team as a client's team.
Sure. So thanks, Gerard. I think you did give a good start to it, but I just want to break down the facts that when we do a facade in India, is that first, and I fully validate Gerard's point of view, is that to have a high vision. And secondly, when you make a vision, the strategy is the price of the product in India. And not denying the fact that most of the facades built across the world are built at a much higher price bracket. And because at the end of the day, India, even today, buildings are leased at $1.2 per square foot per month. So that's the bottom line. We can design whatever we want, but at the end of the day, the viability of the project is very important. So the first and foremost thing is you have a vision, you have a cost to arrive at. But it is not just facade. There are many other components in the building which also need to be looked into, and we need to basically reduce or value engineer, and perhaps have to provide a little bit budgeting on towards the facade, because the vision says that the buildings that we're going to make are going to be the pride for future. If that vision stays. Now, how do we break it down? We started off this facade at a point in time where perhaps blockchain in India was just taking off. Today, if I look back and see the enormous amount. We have created both house and with our strategic partners like UNStudio. There's a lot amount of data available. The paramount factor that we need to consider is that cost value engineering is not. In India, unfortunately, in facade, value engineering leads always to value reduction. So it's like you fascinating design on the drawing board, but you never get it on site. So this was the first thing we look at it. So each time when UNStudio came up with a marvelous design, we, of course, all of us were happy, and we every time met back and forth on how to happen, and that's what even just pointed out. So what we do is we break down facade into multiple components. We then go after the industry, find out who are the major manufacturers, where is the supply coming in. We go right up to the supply. We actually break down the supply chain, and we source materials right from the source. We try to extrude materials. When we do aluminum, we basically do re-rolling of aluminum, which is basically trying to get the waste back into reproduction, which reduces the input cost by at least 20-25%. Look at glass, for example. Manufacturing of glass in a certain size in India is basically because of the limitation of the manufacturing process. So right now, we are trying to talk to manufacturers and glass manufacturers in India to improve their manufacturing lathe machines so they can come with larger panels. We also do analysis between what is the greatest contributor to cost. Is it glass? Is it aluminium? Or is it are the fixtures the most pricey among all the components of the facade? Any facade can be built in India with homework. The idea is you may need a replacement material, and that I'm not talking about a material which is cheap or which is a value. And then we have something called we do something called attribution. Attribution is a methodology by which we try to find out the input cost of every element to arrive at the final facade, and then try to backwork it with the standard costs that are prevalent in the industry. One example I gave you is glass. By changing the panel size of the glass, the ratio of glass and aluminum. If you do a rough math, you would realize that it is not the glass, but it's the aluminum that contributes more to the facade cost. So if you reduce the amount of aluminum in high-rise and perhaps look more into larger glass panels or glass sizes, you can bring the cost of facade. So this is just an example. And as you go high-rise in India, because we have got a certain standards to design for seismic and wind load, you would also know that the panel sizes, when they increase the reinforcement of your aluminum structures like the mullions and the transforms, they need to be reinforced. So here again, there are very many ways to do it. You can either do it with normally your aluminum extrusions are 2 mm wall thickness. The moment you need extra wind load capacities, you basically add the thickness of the aluminum from 2 mm, 3 mm. This is we question the market. Why should you increase the thickness of aluminum? Why not look at a replacement material inside the mullions, which is much cheaper but still offers the same structural rigidity? So I think the way to look at facade is the way to look at re-engineer your components, re-engineer your manufacturing process, and also try to re-engineer with architects, of course, a job done by UNStudio in trying to work out a number of options so that we can value engineer the facade. So I hope I gave you some idea, but it's a long story. It's been 2 years of research, but yeah. So there is what we are trying to do in Karle Infra. But to the final word is, do not lose sight of your vision. Do not drop the ball. That's most important.
No, and I think that I was very happy when Sanoj let us know that you had 1 million hours on site without any incidents. And, these were, next to the challenges of the project, these were also like milestones that we made in the project. So I just want to emphasize also on this point.
Thank you, Gerard, for that point, and Sanoj for especially your discussion of reverse engineering each part of this process, right? And the only way you can do that, I think, comes back to this point of partners. Who are you working with that's going to allow you to do that has the expertise to do that with you? And so I want to move to another question about building the right partnerships. So Gerard, we heard this interesting story from you earlier in the Kutaisi airport of finding this wood manufacturer that you wanted to work with, and you worked on the project a little bit to make sure they could be the ones that built it. I'd like to hear perhaps from Lucio and Deepak, how have you approached this partnership question, and what have been maybe good partnerships, or which partners in particular would you be looking out for in order to make your project work? And Deepak, maybe you want to pick up on this kind of local tribes painting. How did you bring that in? Did you have a particular partnership with someone locally that allowed you to bring that into the project? So either Lucio or Deepak, if you want to address that question.
Yeah, let me jump into this question. It's a very interesting one because the partnership are crucial in a way to get at the end the quality that you need in a project, and to get the vision that you have at the beginning really built, which is at the end of the day what it matters. And I believe Wasl Tower is a very good example of a very good partnership and of a mutual understanding. And it was the complexity is high, and it was certain choices were not typical for the region. We were convinced together with UNStudio that they were the right one, and it was addressing the request for more sustainability. But they were unconventional. The glass was, for instance, very clear. Usually you have much darker glass there. And we were able to convince together the client. And I think what we are seeing there, it's now confirming us that it was the right decision. And the same issue is, of course, to have the proper partners in terms of contractors that understand the vision and that are engaging you in especially when you have challenging projects. You need all the different parties, everybody with different interests, being convinced and pushed for certain innovation to happen.
I think we've lost Deepak. Perhaps he's rejoining.
Well, for perhaps to just add that for the Dubai Tower, it's our challenges started with if you build in the Middle East and you are there and you face the sandstorms and the dust storms and this harsh climate. It reflects a bit back to the Dutch climate, but then the fact that we are below sea level, a big part of our country. And you have to imagine that if the sea level raises with half a meter, I mean, we have a serious problem. So there's because we are in the Rhine Delta and we are spending a lot of money to protect the country against that. And on a smaller scale, with a project like the tower in Dubai, we were just thinking mainly like, why should we start copying European buildings into the Middle East? It doesn't make sense. So protecting the building with ceramics, we felt was making more sense. Because if you just would start using aluminium, for instance, we were even afraid that with the sandblasting, the aluminium could be damaged. Actually, I know there is a lot of testing, and I know the quality is quite high, but still, our first idea from the architects and the designers was to figure out how we could start looking at other materials. And we did some research to ceramics also in Azerbaijan, because there's more oil in the air. And we thought suddenly that this ceramics could be a very good solution. And I think the steps to how to manufacture it, together with the team of Sobek, and building the mock-ups, because the mock-ups is a very important tool for us to actually see how it works and see how it can be tested, was like for us a great challenge. And I can tell you that our architects who are working on the site make very long days, mainly because they are so motivated to make this work. And that also sounds for the engineers on the site. And in the end, it's about the people that can achieve that. as a director, I'm sitting here in Amsterdam and I'm not on the site all the time. I need a team that is actually dedicated and motivated. And when you walk on the site and you talk with them and you see the energy they have to achieve it, and they are flying around the world. I mean, we have visited seriously all ceramic factories in Europe, and we have been flying to China and traveled in the Middle East to visit the factories just to see the production process and to understand how it's being manufactured, and also to understand which machines you need to actually do it. And also with a facade with this size, you know, some manufacturers cannot even handle a project like that. So you also have to figure out who is capable of handling it, and how can you engineer with their specialist a price that is actually feasible for the client. So our first design is never built, because we need to re-engineer it until it's feasible to build it within the cost levels that we have. And that's reality. And that's also, in the end, the fun of it. I mean, if you like doing that, and obviously we are, then that's also a part of our life. It's our challenge to work on that and get that created. So yes, I'm super happy when I see the facade going up.
Yeah, Gerard, it's great that you mentioned this question of how can we work with manufacturers to get something that's going to be affordable for the client, but also withstanding the particular climatic conditions. Eric, I want to come back to the challenge that you posed to yourself in your introduction of, well, you know, you're working in Germany, you're working in the Netherlands, and you're working in the UK. What would it look like for Sorba to be working somewhere else, given the types of manufacturing that you've specialized in? I mean, both this climactic thing of where can you go kind of climactically, and then maybe also back to the partnerships of who would you need on your side to make a leap somewhere else?
Yes, that's a good question, Marisa. And if we would know the answer, then we would already go this direction. But I think, first of all, for us, UNStudio is a good example, and how you, as a architecture studio, developed yourself is incredible. So maybe how you did do this is a good example for us, and we need to look in a better way how you did do this, and we need to talk to you how you did do this. Because, as I said with the presentation of my projects earlier, UNStudio had a large influence on the development as Sorba developed itself. It's due to the projects of UNStudio who gave us the opportunity to build these nice, good-looking facades, and you became very successful, and even in other countries you became successful. And I never forget the moment that I got an invitation for the opening of your office, and where was it? Somewhere in China, I believe. So incredible how you develop yourself. So we need good partners, that's correct. Otherwise we never can go abroad, because Sorba is aiming to build and supply only good quality, and we need to know what we are doing, what we are talking about, where we are dealing with, what requirements we have to meet. And yeah, how can we get this information? How do we know which requirements we have to meet with the facades we build? That's the real big problem, I think. And as soon as we know who could be a partner for us, and telling us, for instance, a project in Azerbaijan, or even in Dubai, or wherever, I don't know where, or in Canada, then it gives us a more secure feeling to make this next step. And of course, we need to look then at the consequences of it's like design engineering, which we can do in-house here in the Netherlands. Production, that's already a challenge. Maybe producing in the Netherlands will be too expensive. We need to look at other facilities somewhere else in the world. We have some contacts in this way, but then of course the last one is installation. Until now, yeah, we know a lot about installation in Germany, Holland, UK. We have very experienced installation teams, but they will be far too expensive to use, and like for instance in Dubai or India or wherever. So also there we need to find a way, the partners, how to go forward, because the biggest risk is always the last part of the job, on the installation side of a job. We always see that this part of the job, you need a very good organization. It's about health and safety, but not only that, it's also about logistics. How do you get your materials on site, building trains, whatever. So working safe, as I mentioned before.
The interesting thing is that we are living in a global world, but in the end, it's not as global as we sometimes think. I talked with Eric a lot, also of course in the past, I think 12, 13 years that we work together. And what we see is that there are issues with insurances, there are issues with guarantees, there are issues with unions. So there are a lot of legal issues. There's issues with bribery, and it is important to understand where you can work and where you cannot work. Our relation with Sorba goes on multiple levels. It's about more the level of how can we learn from each other. And I think that's an important one. It's learning from each other on an ownership level, but also our architects have workshops with the engineers of Sorba together, so that our architects start to understand what is possible. So they can program machines. We have architects that can program robots, which means that they can be there in the factory of Sorba together with their engineers, program the robots, fold the aluminium, see what is possible. And for instance, if we want to have a double curved piece of aluminium, and I'm talking with Eric about it, and Eric finds or has to buy a machine or has to invest, the best thing an architect can have is that a manufacturer is starting to invest in machines that bring our industry a step further. No? That's all what we want. And it's just a few million he needs to invest. I know it's not working that simple, but for instance, for one of the projects we are doing, Eric came to us and said, I have a retired guy, and he is having a machine that can make double curved surfaces. And I am the only one who knows where that machine is. I'm not going to expose that, because I was already super happy that there is a machine somewhere in Europe that could make these double curved aluminium facade pieces, which we are using actually in our projects in the Netherlands. But if we work on a project like that, and Eric comes to us and says, a friend of mine in Switzerland is a paint company, and I think it's interesting that you meet him, because he's so in love with the paint that perhaps you can develop new paints with him together. And that's actually how we were introduced to Monopol, and started to work with Monopol on new types of paints that we as architects were looking for. Of course, with an agenda of how we could make it more sustainable, but also more beautiful and more interesting to work with. And if then our panels travel a lot sometimes, and we would like to reduce that, but sometimes they come from Japan, they are painted in the UK, and then are installed in the Netherlands. And we see a lot of these globalized movements of materials happening in our industry, and because the construction industry is one of the most polluted industries in the world, the question is, how can you actually contribute to a better and more sustainable process line? So the logistics and the process lines are quite important to be able to handle. And I would only encourage to share information and to find partners that can learn from each other, just to make sure that we can improve the logistics and the quality of the production lines.
Yeah, Gerard, that's a great point. I think you made this point, one, about, how do we work together to push the industry forward, and especially about how can we reduce waste and reduce the pollution of the construction industry. Deepak, I did want to ask you about the smart cities that you've been working on, and the brief from whether it's regional governments or the national government regarding the kind of goals of that. So there's obviously a certain kind of technological goal. Smart cities, we understand, are more technologically advanced than other kinds of cities. But what kinds of sustainability ambitions do you see in there? Is there some mention of circularity, which is the big topic here in the Netherlands?
Before I answer your question, Marisa, 2 points which Sinoj and Gerard talked about, I would like to second the point that they put up. One was that not to lose the vision that you have started the project on, because as an architect, many times you dream of something that will come up and you want something to happen, you get inspired. There are a lot of points for inspiration, for you as an architect or as a planner. So that point is there. I mean, that thing is always there, that you want to create something which will be looked upon, which will be an icon. And we discussed this, we talked about this, and I talked about this with a lot of my colleagues. Nowadays, we find that it's not only the private parties, but even we work with a lot of government clients, because the smart city itself is a project where the client is. So we are doing the design, we have to satisfy the needs, the norms of government agencies, authorities, and especially the projects which are there are part of the city or the city development. So when the project actually becomes live or gets completed, it will reflect on the administration of the city. So what is it that they have come up with for the city? So what we find nowadays is a lot of these government officials are much more open to experimentation. The aspiration aspect is there a lot now, which was not there, or maybe it was only there with private owners or clients with whom we used to work. We do a lot of work with government agencies, and we find that there is a lot of change now. Nobody is ready to accept something which is ordinary or just run of the mill. They want something extraordinary, different. So that is the point. I mean, you dream of something and you want to hold on to it. That is one part. The other part is there that to find partners, as Gerard mentioned, you have to find the right partner. So in India, there is a lot of processes that you have to go through to find the right to come up with the design that you have dreamed about, that you want to come out with. And I also liked one of the designs which was shown here, where there was this wooden sort of canopy or roof that has been done. So we have been also trying to do something like that with bamboo as a material, where we have used bamboo, or we are wanting to use as a part of the facade, which is not very common. It is not something that will be used. So that's something again where the experimentation aspect is there, and it's also a part where you have to go and find a partner to do that in the right manner, because ultimately it is something that is not only your vision, it's also something which has to be there, get constructed, and stay there for a long time. So this aspect is there when we are designing these projects, doing these presentations and things like that. Sustainability, yes, it's a very important part for us here in India, because we have, as I already mentioned, we have variation of climate throughout the year. So we have to do something where the product is long lasting, it doesn't harm your environment. We have a lot of awareness now in India about the environment. The new government has been very, very vocal about protecting the environment. You might have heard about the rejuvenation of Ganges River, which is a very important project right now in India. And the river, which was polluted a lot, now we can see that change happening. So these are the projects. This is the sort of approach that is there now in India, and just like we have LEED in India, all government projects or semi-government projects have to get a GRIHA rating, which is something similar to what LEED or IGBC is. It is mandated that we should have it. So when we are doing the projects, that is always there at the back of our mind, that whatever the materials or the construction process that we are going to satisfy those norms. And the third thing which I would like to mention is that when we have come up with a design, or when we have come up with something that needs to get created or get executed, what we have seen in the last few years, or what we have done rather in the last few years, whenever we have tried to get our projects off the ground, is we have to keep looking for people who can do it in a better manner and in an economical manner. I will use the word economical instead of cheap. We do have a lot of constraints for the budget. Some of these projects are all funded, so that we have to stay within that envelope of the budget. So we have to look at these things. I mean, you can dream of something which can be iconic, or which should look something extraordinary or different, should stand out. But there are these other aspects which are there, and I think what the other panelists have been talking about, this is a process. It keeps happening. If something doesn't work, you go to the next thing, you try to make it work. So we work with different materials. We have tried to do that with different materials, different types of construction, and we have also tried to people who can do
Deepak, we lost you towards the end there, but thank you for the answer. And we'll move to take some questions from the audience now. We've had a few come in, and Gerard, let me start with you. Someone has asked, regarding the airport project in Kutaisi, did you decide to use timber after checking the manufacturer's capacity, or was that the material of choice since the beginning of the project?
No, we designed it in steel. So our first intention was to make it out of steel. Then when we visited the factory and we saw the capabilities of the manufacturer, we changed it into wood because we immediately thought that this would give a better opportunity to use a local company, but also to have local people being trained in a project like this is an opportunity, and it would be a win-win situation. So for us, that was the key element that we thought, let's change it. We didn't have to think long about it. We were working there with 3 of our architects and with the client, and we just looked at each other and we said, okay, let's do it. Let's just start looking at how we can change it. We called the engineers when we were working on the site and told them that we were going to change the design. You have to imagine that at that moment they were preparing already the foundation works, so it was a bit of a thing, but still we thought it was the right decision, and we still stand by it. It came literally after we visited that factory and we saw the capabilities, and we thought, this is really a surprise. It's like discovering something and becoming really enthusiastic about it, and then you have to also follow your gut feeling and make sure that this can be done.
Great, thank you. We'll keep going. So we're nearing the hour here in the Netherlands, but we'll keep going with some questions. Please stick around. Sinoj, we have a question for you. How soon do you think the attribution system will be working to calculate the carbon footprint for projects in India? You're muted, Sinoj.
Yeah, am I audible? Sorry for that.
Yep.
Yeah, so at this moment in time, the attribution system is quite prevalent in the civil and structural engineering and general building finishes. For the glass industry or for the facade industry, as Eric, most of the world outside of India is high. Unfortunately or fortunately, in India, it is quite labor intensive even today. the traveling of commodity across the world is also perhaps a positive sign for a cost-sensitive market for India. So we call it what we call as globalization. We call the global inputs but make it locally prevalent, which means you have to source the material, manufacture the material, assemble the material in India, and subscribe to the international standards of quality and safety. I can give you an example. When we made an attribute between stick system, which is the very basic facade system, versus the unitized system. Now, unitized system is mostly used abroad. The reason is it's easy to install. It's manufactured offsite. It has a high precision, higher quality, and in terms of a better product inside. But the problem is the consumption of aluminium on unitized system by virtue of its design, it's around 40% more than stick system. The problem is you cannot do a cost arbitrage when you're already 40% higher on the input quantity of basic material that is consumed by the facade system. So when we do, so to answer the question, yes, attributions and detailed comparisons of facades would be ready. I would say it's another 2 more years before we can see it organized. Because we have to also transform the industry. The advantageous part of facade industry in India is most of the equipments and machinery used in the facade industry is quite modern. And most of it is offsite manufactured under control conditions. So it is very easy to basically bring a higher level of quality and production efficiency. But the only thing we need to focus is cost arbitrage. That's the example I was trying to tell you. If the input cost is lowered, material and the use of softwares like the fabric and simulation softwares by brings down wastages significantly. I mean, in our own project, we have an example where between various instances of changing the parameters of our facade, we drop input costs by at least 24%. So there is a lot of effort being put in by collaborative architects and studios like UNStudio in helping us reduce the inherent wastage when it comes to design. We are working with, in attribution, we are working with local manufacturers in reducing the input cost of materials. And what would be the requirement from facade component manufacturers is to try and re-engineer components to reduce the cost to input material cost.
Yeah, and our challenge is, of course, when we see that we can drop aluminium by moving to a different construction system, is to take out aluminium entirely and make a full glass facade. You know, as architects, that's what we want. And if that is as cheap a solution than using aluminium, and knowing that aluminium is also, you know, you need bauxite to produce it, there is a challenge also over there. So, but we are not there yet, at least. That's what I understand all the time. It's still not possible to, you know, looking also at the constraints of seismic and other products to make full glass facades. But that's one of our challenges that we are after. It's also one of the innovations we work on in our company to see how to achieve that with, for instance, using a glue and nanotechnology in how to produce these type of facades. And what we like, I mean, the interesting thing is that if you look at for instance, the climate agreement I mentioned for Paris, every country that signed it has to develop a package literally to determine how to bring down the CO2 emissions. And India is actually quite on track. They promised to bring it back with 33 to 38%. And there's a huge amount of investments that we see. So next to the smart cities, we also see a huge investments in bringing back the carbon footprint. You see literally street lights being turned into LED lights. You see a waste management, which is like, I think that an increase of more than 60% of recycling. And with our clients, we see a big challenge also over there, but also to invent new technologies that can be used literally on site and be exported all over India or even the world. So there's a challenge and a chance. So one way we see a challenge, on the other hand, we see new business models. And these new business models are super interesting if you compare how you could start using data to build these new business models. And one of the things that we are working on very actively is with clients to figure out how we can build these future business models. Also for the Karla side, we have talked about how can we turn it into a smart city program. The team of Karla has set up a smart team and started to analyze data together with manufacturers and specialists. We have received memory sticks full of data, but we had no idea how to translate that into something useful, because if you get all the data from the parking garage, you still don't know how to start using it. So that's why we have set up a separate daughter company who is specializing itself now in this data platforms and also urban data analysis. And if you see worldwide the amount of investments into how to use smart data, how to work with the privacy situation, and how we could actually benefit from it as users or as people that live in an area like that or work in an area like that, the opportunities are literally gigantic. The question is only which business models do you want to use? And there are a lot of business models that are being tested by startups. And for us, the challenge is also how to translate that into our manufacturing systems, and how can we use the sensors and the data for air pollution, for parking grids, temperatures, heat load reductions. There's so many topics that you can address from, and of course for the people who live there and the people who work there, just something as simple as car sharing could already be interesting. But there's so much more that you can win with it, and that you can find. There's more data available that we can actually translate into operational business models. And that's also why we think that this program in India of the smart cities is a super interesting program to tap into and to start looking at, but also with keeping in mind this climate change agenda that is there, and the relevance of meeting people and integrating and making sure that that you start talking to each other and start sharing opinions and start sharing knowledge. And for us, that part is as valuable as the design itself. But sometimes a beautiful design can help attract partners. It's sometimes like a magnet that can attract interesting partners that want to contribute. And I think that's one of the challenges that we see also.
Got it, Gert. Lucio, do you want to come in on the ecological point again? I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so let me jump into this. I think it's one of the most interesting part and a big challenge for us in the future, but it's also a chance, as Gert was saying. And we believe we are doing a lot of research there, that it is important to deal with the overall, with the big picture. It's not only about what is the energy consumption during the use of the project. It's also about what kind of materials are used, what is their carbon footprint, how much of this material can be recycled. There is a lot that is going to change because of the target of the 2 degrees that we set, and I think it's good so. And there is a lot that today you can do with the computational tools that you have. So there are ways of dealing with data. There are ways of making simulations. Our experience over the last years is that you can have a pretty inclusive, in a way, simulation in different stages of the design in order to drive, in a way, your design. So it is possible that even in the concept phase at the beginning, you get first feedbacks from your simulation tools, and we are working into that. And these drive certain decisions towards certain materials, towards certain way of fabrication. And even for the client, if you, at the end of the day, you bring a balance, which is not only about the construction cost, but it's about the next 20, 30 years in terms of cost. this is going to be the future, because carbon emission will be subject to taxes in the future. We all aware about that, and I think it's our obligation as a consultant to give to developer, to client, to user the big picture over a longer time frame. And as a Werner Sobek, and also here at the university, we are working on these targets in order to provide tools and methods that can address this issue.
Lucio, Ahad, do you want to add a question?
Just let me get my camera back on. Right. So I have a few questions which have come in offline from a couple of my friends. These are more mass-related questions and more from an Indian perspective. It'll probably be more apt if Deepak or Sinoj can answer to them. So when we first got to know of this panel discussion, so I have a lot of friends who are in the contracting industry globally, but of course, since we started everything from India, I have a lot of contractors who are who are in India doing projects. So when I told them that we have a panel discussion with UNStudio regarding a project which they're doing in India, they were like, look, UNStudio builds very complex facades, and these kind of facades will never get built in India. Even if they are designed, they will be highly value engineered because we are a cost sensitive market, and those designs will only be for 3D purpose for sales, so they will not be the way they are built. So as developers, look, I'm someone who is working globally. We are doing events globally. For me, it's a little disappointing that in my own home country of India, I don't see the kind of complex projects which UNStudio does or any other global architectural firm getting realized. For example, Heard and Lucio spoke about the Vassal Tower. I have seen this personally in Dubai. But I never see the use of terracotta or ceramic being used on a facade ever, in India. That will most likely get value engineered into an aluminum fin with terracotta finish or powder coated, or ceramic finish powder coating, that's the typical value addition. When am I going to see projects in India? Look, I'm a facade enthusiast. I like to call myself that. I love to see buildings. I love to see facades. But, when I walk in streets of London or where I walk in streets of Amsterdam, I can touch the ceramic glaze of buildings and go, it feels nice, but I would never be able to ever do that in India, or is there a future for it? Why do facades get value engineered? How much of the design intent of the original design intent of the architect actually gets built? Is it that we because the basic tendency in India is, the facade is the last part of the building. Let's get the structure to get ready, and then whatever money is left, let's then build the facade with. This is a common feedback facade contractors have in India, that we come right at the end. We are never involved in the beginning. So question for you, Sinoj and Deepak, is how early do you bring the facade contractor in? How much importance do you see the facade for your project, and how much of the design which an international architecture firm like UNStudio has given you actually try to realize without value engineering components of the same? Sorry, it was a long question, but these were 5-6 points which a couple of people told me when they came to know we are doing this discussion, and they were like, "Oh, UNStudio, that's never going to be built in India." I would believe this, that this would be wrong, and we have clients like Karle, like TCE, and others who will at least come to the level where we can build facades which are wow. I remember Heard saying that the promoter of Karle was a visionary. He wanted something different from what is happening in India. He's a little embarrassed by what's happening, the way construction is happening in India and things like that. How do we and I want to know from you guys, how much will you guys build of what those illustrations those 3D illustrations of UNStudio we saw, because this is something we would be very proud of as a facade industry over here in India, to see these kind of buildings being built.
To answer that question, Gerard, that kind of increases our challenge in the Indian market, because people have started taking notice of our project. So good. So large part of the journey is made. People are all waiting. So to answer that question.
Was quite it was actually built, this happened when Filippo Lodi, one of our colleagues of UNStudio, presented at our Bangalore event a couple of years ago. He had given a sneak peek of the Karle Infra project, but obviously he didn't talk. From that time it's like, oh, okay, they show all these kind of images, we know what's going to be built, so it's become a way of life for the contractors here, that they themselves are like, okay, this is not going to be built, and they don't want to invest on technology. They don't want to go for the 4-axis, 5-axis, the big machining centers, or go to the profile of kind of work what Sorba does and all that stuff, So it is a little disappointing for me, because I'm seeing projects all across the world. I'm working with, I'm seeing factories of contractors all around the world, and in India, people just don't want to invest in those kind of complex stuff like what Sorba does, because they're just disillusioned that clients will never build what an international architect does. So I would like you to prove this point wrong, and I would like you to tell that you as an organization are taking efforts to realize the vision of what your promoter and what a designer like UNStudio is actually building and can be built in India. Of course, little value engineering, I understand, but obviously it should be practical for your budget also.
Well, in our talks, we normally, you have a space program. You can do everything, no? So, and yes, every project needs value engineering, but in fact, our first projects are under construction, and we are going through extensive value engineering sessions. Until now, I did not get the feedback from the client that our projects would not be built as we designed them. So I'm very confident at the moment that we can actually create what we are promising, and with that create, I would say, a really unique town center, which will be green and will be painted with this coolest white, and that would be the biggest project ever that we can experiment on this. And that's why this data where we talked about is also so important, so that we can actually start measuring the results. Because if this is going to be created, you really want to figure out also, can we get to a carbon neutral development? Can we, how much energy can we save? How can we deal with the waste management on the site? And if it, is it really going to be used the way we designed it? And also from the side of Senoj, I did not get any feedback that it was not feasible or possible.
I think Sanoj is frozen, so I'll just comment on that. So that is very good. It's encouraging signs that the project will be built the way it is designed. Let me get a comment from Mr. Deepak, because Sanoj is frozen. So Mr. Deepak, if you can just comment on on what I mentioned. Sorry, mine was more of a statement than a comment, but. Designs being value engineered, international architects being hired, but then being value engineered. What's your comment on this one? Because it's a common phenomenon in India, and international architects don't want to come and work. I wouldn't want to be naming firms, but there are some firms who have washed away hands with India, saying that, listen, I gave the design, then the developer took over, kept a local executive architect and completed on his own, and it's not what I designed. So it's very shocking for me to hear statements like this. Because I invite people to come and speak at events, and India, okay, let's keep India aside. Okay, you have an event in the UK, you have an event in the US, okay, we would prefer to speak there. India, no, our designs get value engineered. What's your comment on the same?
Obviously, I cannot comment why, what is the experience that the other architects are having in India. I find now Gerard is there. He's doing a project here in India, and he's already mentioned that he's not facing any sort of resistance from the from Senoj and the people over there in terms of what he wants to construct, or he wants to plan, or he wants to execute. So my comment on this will be that, see, these things will take time. There is definitely this aspect. Let me tell you something from my experience. I will talk about it. If you talk about curtain walls or glass facades, okay, few years ago, I will say about 20 years ago, this thing started coming in 15 or 20 years ago, and it was very new for us, even for us as architects who were exposed to it. If you talk about a lay person who has never seen anything like that, and suddenly to see buildings like that, those being constructed here in India, the first reaction was that, "Arey, this won't work here. We have such a hot climate, and how can we have a building with so much of glass," and things like that. Even we were a bit cynical initially. But then once we started working on it, we saw buildings being constructed. We saw we used to get exposed to structures, buildings happening elsewhere in the world. The aspirational factor came in. Nowadays, you know that you can just go onto the net, Google something, come up with something. We have a lot of experience of our clients, and I will say, when I talk about clients, these are not, as I already mentioned, it's not only about the private clients, it's also about government authorities. They will show us something, okay, why don't you do something like this? Of course, that's a bit encroaching on your thing or your field as such, but it's the word I will use here is the aspiration is there, to have something which is being constructed somewhere else in the world. So why can't we have it here in India? So that is something that we face a lot, or I will say we experience a lot nowadays. And so that change is happening. See, it will take time. You can't have something. You mentioned ceramic. Okay, I will tell you that we have already used ceramic tiles for facade, but on a very small scale. Obviously, you talk about these materials being used on skyscrapers and big.
So Tata is always special. Tata is special, and Tata is corporate. Let's talk about conventional developers.
I know. I'm talking in general. I agree with what you're saying. There is aspect of cost which will always come in projects here in our country. The point I'm trying to make is there will be change. The change will be gradual. It won't happen overnight. You are seeing, as you mentioned, you're seeing something in London or in some other part of the world, Dubai. We keep seeing. We have stopped getting amazed by the buildings that get constructed in Dubai, because new pictures and new forms and all these things keep coming, and something which we thought was something great or out of this world becomes outdated so fast. So yes, these things will come, definitely will come, but they will take time. And that factor is there in India. That factor in our country, it will be there. It will be a factor. But I won't agree with the point you made of facade being thought about at the end. It never happens like that. The facade is a very integral part of our designs. We do sometimes have to, you use a very diplomatic word, value engineer the things. So we do have to do that sometimes, but we do try to, stick to our design. Maybe we work with some alternate material or an alternate way of doing it. So yes, it is a fact that these things are there, but hopefully we'll be seeing something in the near future.
So, sorry, did I lose you guys at some point in time?
We lost you.
So just to answer the question, how do we make it happen? Of course, the vision is important, and we need to have strong partners who would also not compromise on their vision, like UNStudio. That said, the concept of bringing in the contractor, we bring in the contractors and the fabricators right at the beginning. We don't work in an instruction model, we work in a partnership model. So we don't believe in basically hiding the specifications and then probably going for a blind negotiation with the vendors. We exactly know what we want, so we We give the right specification, the right detail to the vendors. Then we sit with them, we work with them in partnership, and then find out how we can change things and we can make it happen. An example is that the average size of glass that used to be manufactured in India was about 1.1 meter in a panel size. It was in the projects in Karle Town Center, we pushed the benchmark to 1.4. By using 1.4 meter wide glasses, you reduce the number of mullions by at least 10 to 15% in an entire facade. Now, these are things which we never looked into because there is always a hidden cost which could have been pruned earlier. So what we're trying to do is we try to look at a partnership right from the vendor to the labor contractor. We bring labor right to the site. We explain to them how to do the things. We also try to have sessions, workshop sessions prior to commencement of a small area or a pilot area of the facade. We try to write down all the mistakes that the laborers make at site, and then try to instruct the workmen how not to do it, incentivize them for good jobs. See, there is some ground up revisions that we're trying to do in the way we look at. So to answer your question, Ahad, it's our promise and our commitment to get this new buildings done in India, and that's our joint commitment with UNStudio that we will push the envelope and make it happen. It will take time, but it is there, and you'd see that the buildings are coming up. Most buildings, the first skin is over. The second skin is starting by the beginning of next year. And so maybe in another 6 months, you'll see the first of the buildings from UNStudio up and running in Karle Town Center. So that's what we are in.
It would be lovely, and we would love to see more complex projects of UNStudio in India, because if you guys build the way they design, I'm sure others will make notice that complex facades are buildable in India with Indian conditions, with Indian labels, with Indian fabricators, with Indian designers, with Indian clients, and I'm sure many more Vassal Tower kind of projects will come in India. So
actually, I think
Werner Sobek, UNStudio present more at our Indian events. So yeah.
No, I think that there's also something interesting that we picked up during this process we are in. For instance, we had one negotiation about aluminium, which was quite interesting to follow from our side, because we made kind of a interesting complex fin structure which was perforated, and then the team of Karle started to do the negotiations, and they were actually bringing in the vendors based on the kilogram price, which they did because we had a perforated facade, so it's cheaper to buy it by the kilo because you don't buy the holes. But in my opinion, when you buy the fins with the holes, it's more expensive. But if you buy it by the kilo, it's less expensive. And to facilitate the vendors, Karle is providing loans to buy machines to do the stamping and the perforations. So it's also a partnership in the fact that Karle is willing to invest in vendors to make sure that they can actually produce it. And I think that the way of thinking in how to achieve this is only possible if you are looking at the entire chain. And the way how we have been working until now, we have seen in the meetings people joining that are part of this entire chain. So to build up the industry, you have to look at the entire chain. You cannot do it only by making a drawing and tender documentation package and then see what the market is doing. Because if you are doing that, the market will just say no, because they have no idea how to do it. And we need partners that actually understand the market, but are also willing to invest in the market to build up the chain. And perhaps because we are working on 1.3 million square meter, this is a kind of a leverage that you have. So you can actually think about a different way of approaching it. But the beauty would be if that could be enrolled farther. And also the beauty is that if you can do it this way, everybody can do it this way. So it's again a kind of a navigator project in how you could approach the market. And it's similar as what we see in Korea, for instance, where companies we work with are more conglomerates that have all the manufacturers in their own their own business or have shares in these manufacturers because they have built up that knowledge together. So this partnership model could be an interesting model also to develop further. And then look at what the possibilities for the design are, for the innovations and for the technology development. And we work with so many people with an Indian background worldwide. So there is so much knowledge worldwide. So for us, it's perhaps only a time issue. It's not about the fact that the knowledge is not there. It's there. It's just spread all over the world almost. So how can we bring that together? I mean, we are working in Azerbaijan with a guy who worked in a geophysics factory in Dubai for more than 10 years. He's setting up his own factory. We advised our client also to invest in it so that he could buy the right machines. If he can set up the factory, then there can be a professional geophysics industry. And there is something we can learn from each other also in that aspect. And I know that crises are hard, the time is hard. Now we are not even allowed to travel. Everybody is working from home. There are more urgent, pressing issues that we have to deal with, like with COVID. I mean, but as an industry, there should still be a bulb of light in the end of the tunnel that we can believe in and where we can work on. Otherwise we lose our passion. So without losing reality, we still think that the business models and the energy that we have to put in the business models sometimes is as big as we have to put into the architecture and design itself. So as long as Karle is financially strong enough to keep on pushing and can motivate the teams to do what is necessary, which is not easy under these time and circumstances, we can contribute whatever we can.
Right. Marisa, yours to close?
Yeah, I think, Gerard, you've brought us there. We're there. Let's end on a note of strong partnerships to make happen the projects we want. And that it's just a matter of time, right? To Deepak's point, we will see these projects in India, and we will see Karltown open in no time at all. So I'd like to close it there and say thank you to everyone. Ahad, I don't know if you have another closing comment.
Last comment. Yes. So we had some issues in the beginning in terms of the lag. So what I'm going to do is I'll take the PowerPoint from Marisa. I will integrate the slides and I will edit the recording so that those who have missed this session or those who could not pick that up, because we got a lot of comments saying the slides were not synced. I'll get the sync re-edited. So I'd like to thank our panelists, Eric, Senoj, Deepak, Lucio, Marisa, Gerard, and Marisa once again for facilitating this and moderating this session. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for this time. I hope it was productive. I'm sure this kind of discussion can go on and on for hours, but then we all have our other work to do. So we'll end this session. So thank you, gentlemen, and I hope to see more projects being designed by UNStudio, engineered by Werner Sobek, and also probably have a contractor of Sorba scale doing projects for TCE and Karle in the future. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll end today's session here.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.